afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are presenting to you the latest generation of the Mercedes A-Class. I first of all have to apologize for the wind noise. We are by the beach here in Greece by Rhodes. We are in Lalissos. Now, today, this is all about the Mercedes A-Class. And a lot of people have been driving this car, but they haven't really done much research as to the history of the A-Class, because it was first debuted in 1997, the first generation of the A-Class, which looked a bit like a smart car on steroids. So the first generation of the Mercedes A-Class was the W178, released in 1997. The second generation was released in 2004, the W169. That was the facelift of the first generation of the Mercedes A-Class, which looked like the big smart car. The third gen of the Mercedes A-Class, the W176, was debuted in 2013. It shares the same platform as the CLA and the GLA also. That is the most common series of the A-Class and the CLA and GLA that you see everywhere, pretty much around London and Europe. Now here we have the fourth generation, the W177, which was debuted in 2018, first seen in Amsterdam. And here we have the latest generation of the platform. This is the A180, which is a 1.3 litre inline 4-cylinder turbo 16 valve. It produces about 136 brake horsepower and about 148 foot-pounds of torque. Mated to the 7-speed dual-clutch transmission that Mercedes have now implemented into their cars, it does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 8.8 seconds. The 7-speed dual-clutch transmission in this car is also known as the 7G DCT. Now, this car shares the same platform as the Mercedes A-Class, which is obviously this one. Also the A-Class Saloon, which is the extended version with the 4 doors in the boot, and also the GLA, and lastly the Mercedes CLA. It's interesting how in the previous gen from 2013 there was no such thing as the A-Class Saloon, but now in the W177 they've introduced a new shape of the car, being the A-Class Saloon, to cater to people who don't want to go for the steep sloped roofline on the CLA. Now when you're purchasing the Mercedes A-Class, you have to be very careful, because there is one specific engine that I very dislike in this car, because it's not an engine from Mercedes. It's actually the 1.5 DCI engine from Renault, which Mercedes are calling the A180E. That engine is from Renault, and I strongly suggest when you're choosing this vehicle, you try your best to avoid that engine. This being the entry level of Mercedes, we do know that the cheapest engine to go for would be the A180D, just to get the Mercedes badge. But really and truly, the heart of the car doesn't belong to Mercedes, which is why I strongly suggest you make a different option, like maybe this one, just the A180, or maybe the A200. Speaking of the A200, it actually shares the same engine as the A180, just slightly tuned more, exact same engine, producing about 163 brake horsepower, slightly more torque at 178 foot-pounds, and decreased acceleration time of 0 to 60 in just 8 seconds on the dot. Comparing that to the A180, bearing in mind it shares the same engine and you could get a remap yourself if you needed the power, is it really worth going for the A200 over the A180? I'm not too sure about that. The A250 is a bit more appetizing. It's an inline 4-cylinder 2-litre turbo, producing 224 brake horsepower and about 258 foot-pounds of torque, with the 7G DCT taking the car from 0 to 60 in just 6.2 seconds with a top speed of 155 miles per hour. If you're looking for economy over everything, the A250E shares this same 1.3 litre inline 4-cylinder turbo, but it also has a plug-in hybrid system for economy. Now, the hybrid system combined with the 1.3 litre engine produces about 218 brake horsepower, and as you can imagine, with the extra boost from the hybrid system, there's a lot more torque at 170 foot-pounds of torque, mated to the 7G DCT, taking it from 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds. Might be slightly slower than the A250, but bearing in mind you're getting better fuel economy, the performance difference at just 0.4 seconds quicker to 60 miles per hour, you might want to consider the A250E as an economical option. And the top speed of the A250E is 146 miles per hour. The A250 being 155, there's not much in it. Now the battery capacity is 15.6 kilowatts, and it takes 5.5 hours to charge. The battery range is only 44 miles, so if you're doing a lot of motorway driving, it's not going to really help you out. It's mostly for the city, so city drivers, the A250, you might want to consider it over the A250 or even the A200. Obviously the hybrid system will cut out when you're doing over a certain speed. Hybrid systems usually only help you up to about 30 miles per hour, so when you're doing more than that, you're basically just relying on the engine itself. This engine, the 1.3 litre, being very economical, it will still do decent fuel economy. Moving on to the more juicy engines, the A35 AMG, still a 2 litre inline 4-cylinder turbo, producing 306 brake horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque, taking the car from 0 to 60 in just 4.8 seconds, and the top speed of 155 miles per hour. All AMG models in the A-Class come mated with Mercedes 4MATIC full drive system, so you're not going to really struggle for traction much in the AMG models. Lastly, the most powerful engine that the A-Class provides is the A45 AMG 4MATIC, which is the top spec version, producing about 421 brake horsepower and about 368 foot-pounds of torque, taking the car from 0 to 60 in this small hatchback in just 3.9 seconds, with a top speed of 168 miles per hour. Some of you that watch car reviews, car channels, you might be familiar with Matt Watson's Car Wow Stick of Truth. I'm just gonna search around. I am very OCD when it comes to fake air vents and things like that, body parts on the car that just don't need to be there, acting like they support the car's aerodynamics when they actually serve no purpose. So let's just have a look around the car. Nope. Nothing going through there, no air flowing through to support any sort of aerodynamics. There's nothing back there, there's no intercooler, there's no nothing. It's just useless. As you can see here, there is air flowing through to support the intercooler. If we take a closer look down here, these sides are fake, but in the middle, air does flow through. If I just go down underneath the car just to look for the exhaust pipe, it is down here, the exhaust. Don't know why they're hiding it. There aren't any particular fake air vents or other parts I can see that serve no purpose. If you're looking at the Mercedes A-Class, you're probably comparing it to the Audi A3 and the BMW 1 Series. And now that the BMW 1 Series F40 is now front-wheel drive initially, unless you're to go for the X-Drive version, but still it's going to be front-wheel bias. The Mercedes A-Class W177 now is a good competitor to that car, and also the Audi A3. But bearing in mind that the Audi A3 have initially been front-wheel drive from back in the day, from the 8P models and the first generation, and now BMW have only started to make front-wheel drive cars. You might want to consider which would be more reliable.